Welcome to Flip the Cap, the insurance industry's premier podcast. I'm your host, Kathryn Smith, and I can't wait to pop the top on all things insurance, sharing key legislative trends, coverage comparisons, and specialized industry content. Today I'm joined with Deb Dioguardi, Senior Vice President at Jencap, and most importantly, a professional lines expert. She's played an integral role in the growth of the management, professional, and cyber liability practice at Jencap. She's a super sought-after wholesale brokerage expert, particularly in professional lines, and after today's podcast, you'll understand why. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Deb Dioguardi, and let's pop the top and get into it.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Popping the top. Cheers. So I like to always start the podcast with just a little getting to know you segment. So in the spirit of that, my first question to you, Deb, is when you were a kid, you're unique in that you really have dedicated your entire career to the insurance industry. But as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a police officer.
Okay.
Then when I got a little older, I set my sights on being a forensic psychologist. And that's what I basically went to school for.
As a forensic psychologist?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I decided that I didn't want to look at that all day. And I kind of went a different path and graduated, and I started in insurance, and that was it.
Does your background in forensic psychology play into your day-to-day brokerage life?
Well, I actually it does a little bit because I took a lot of law classes.
Okay.
And I started off when I became a broker, I did start off doing employment practices liability. That was the first product that I specialized in. And that had to do with a lot of laws, discrimination laws. So I kind of felt like I was using my degree just a little bit.
Okay. So growing up or on this trajectory of college and deciding that you want to get insurance, was there anyone influential in your life that steered you towards the insurance industry?
Well,
was it random that you fell into it?
I don't think any of us really fall into it randomly. Usually you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody that's in the industry. But one of my close friends was actually in the industry at that time. She was a young woman in the industry, and she was the underwriter to Dave Vicari, my boss at the time, and she basically said to me, "Hey, this is a pretty good gig. I like it." And I knew she was doing really well, and she was going to dinners, and it looked like it was all this glamorous life out there. So she had known David, who had a position open for an assistant, and that was it. And I interviewed and got the job, and that's how I got into the industry.
So you've been at this for a little while, being part of the insurance industry. What's your favorite part about it? And what's your favorite part about your job also?
Well, my favorite part about the industry itself are the people, to tell you the truth. Even from our competitors to our underwriters to our customers. I mean, I think overall there's pretty good people in this industry. People that want to work hard, that are very smart, and that just want to make a really good living. And my favorite part about my job is, I do feel like we're helping people. I went through the period with COVID and working on a lot of restaurants and how to help them stay open. So I think we bring a service. We try to get them the most coverage and from a technical aspect, which we have. So, I mean, really, I do think we provide a service out there. Just, we're not just providing insurance, but we're really trying to help somebody take them through the hard times that have affected us over the last few years.
Along those lines, how would you define success in your role?
Success in my role? Success in my role isn't just to specifically bind an account. It's really I like to be a partner to the retail broker. So, a lot of times my account's sometimes the smallest in premium size out of the whole entire package, but it could be the one account, that one product that gets the broker the order to bind on a whole big package. So I think to me that's successful, being that extra length where they're not comfortable with the type of insurance that we specialize in. I think I can bring that to the table and make them comfortable and help them seal the deal and make the client comfortable with the professional lines and the management liability lines.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit on a completely random personal question, but what's your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is rude people.
It's a good one.
Just in general, from a business standpoint and also personal standpoint. I'm big into saying please and thank you. And I also don't understand, sometimes in our industry, I started in the industry when people were we'd scream and yell at you, never say thank you to get what they want. And they thought that that's the way it was going to work. And I'm not a believer of that. And I think there's always a please and thank you no matter what level employee you are. If I'm out to dinner, if the waiter's nice, you say thank you. If you're at work and you do a great job at an account, you say thank you.
Oh, that's why you're great at what you do. And people love working with you. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, it's time for Deb to flip the cap. Katie Crouch holds the record for this game that you know nothing about of 5 attempts to get the cap into the cup.
Okay.
So hopefully you'll hold it down for the ladies, and we'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Flip the Cap is brought to you by Jencap. Jencap is one of the largest wholesale intermediaries in the United States with expertise in wholesale brokerage, binding authority, and program management. Jencap has specialized divisions and affiliate companies that provide niche expertise, unparalleled market access, and nationwide influence. Encompassing expertise from every corner of the industry, Jencap is the ultimate award-winning insurance family. Put Jencap to work for you.
Welcome back to Flip the Cap. This is the fun part where I have my special guests actually flip the cap. We're going to put them in the hot seat. Deb, just a quick rules for the game here. You can see on the leaderboard that 6 is the score to beat. The only rule is you can't have your elbow go past the table.
No pressure, little girl power here.
See what you got, girl.
All right.
All right. Got 1. Woo! So Deb, next time we will update our leaderboard. Woo-hoo! Is the score to beat with 2. Kanan and Mark, you lose. Good job.
Thank you.
We're back to Flip the Cap. Thanks again, Deb, for being such a good sport. We appreciate it.
No problem.
But without further ado, let's dig in. We have an incredible professional lines expert here with us, so let's tap into your knowledge and your expertise. You've literally dedicated your entire career not only to insurance, but to the professional lines industry. I want to start with cyber, because cyber is such a trending topic, and everywhere you look, there's a news article talking about the latest cyber breach or how to protect your company from a cyber breach. The list goes on and on and on and on. In your experience, you've had 25 years of front row seat to the professional lines industry. How has cyber insurance evolved from where you sit when you first started the insurance industry to what you're seeing happening today?
Well, I first started doing cyber the first policy I probably wrote was probably like 10 years ago. So, it hasn't really been around very long. It probably came out about 15 years ago, let's say.
Okay.
Very limited coverage, sometimes added onto a professional liability policy or a D&O policy, so you weren't getting much coverage. But it's within the last 3 years, it's evolved drastically. As a lot of us know, there's been a lot of ransomware claims, which have triggered insurance companies to take a much deeper dive into the systems that are in place for each company. I think a lot of retail brokers, as well as wholesale brokers, have had to put on their IT hats, which we never had to do before, and learn a lot about what companies have to have in place from an IT perspective to be able to get insurance. With little help from a lot of the companies with making us knowledgeable about that. So it's evolved to the point where if you do not have proper systems in place, you will not get a cyber liability policy. We've educated our retail brokers to be proactive with their renewals by starting the renewal process not a month out, starting the renewal process as far out as 6 months. The insurance carriers have provided us with some risk management tools, scans of systems to allow to identify issues in their insured systems so that they could fix it before the renewal happens.
What about the players that are present in this space right now? How has that changed?
It's changed drastically. We have a lot of insurtech-based insurance companies that have evolved, where with the insurtech-based companies, you're not looking at your typical underwriter. You're looking at an underwriter that has a lot of IT specialty as well as underwriting. So there's a different perspective on how they look at a risk. We also are using, for cyber specifically, we're using a number of different platforms to give us a lot of different options for cyber liability quotes right in front of your hand. So instead of just going to one insurance company, you're running it through a platform where you're getting multiple quotations. So you're not even really dealing physically with an underwriter. A lot different than the way we typically work. Cyber liability has evolved where it's more of a risk management type policy than actually an insurance policy. So you're using it for the risk management tools that it comes with. And a trigger of the coverage isn't necessarily a claim being made against them or someone asking for money. It's basically a breach occurring. That's when the policy comes into play. It's a first party coverage.
If you take it back to all things professional lines, what value does a strong relationship with the wholesale broker bring to a retail agent, and what is that Jencap advantage?
I think the biggest value we could bring is the market access. That's a big value. Whereas you might have, a retail agent may have 7 or 8 markets that they go to. We probably have 40-something markets that we go to. We are also, if you go to a wholesale broker that's a specialist like Jencap in this particular area, we will know what policy forms are better than other policy forms. What policy forms, for example, if we're talking about cyber liability, what policy forms are sublimiting ransomware coverage and which ones are giving you the full limit of liability. Which ones are best. We do thorough policy comparisons, whereas some specialists don't do that. An insurance company is not going to do a policy comparison against someone else's policy for you, whereas a good wholesale broker is able and capable of doing policy comparisons for you and showing you exactly what your insured's purchasing and how to explain it. Especially with cyber liability and some of these other coverages that are misunderstood, cyber liability, especially directors and officers liability, we're available for conference calls. Let us help you talk to your insured, make them more comfortable with the risk. Literally, our job is to worry about this particular section of insurance while you take care of everything else on the package. Let us handle this and be an extension of your agency.
Because this is all you do every day, is you see the same type of insurance, whereas a retail broker might do property, they might do personal lines, they might do transportation. You can't possibly be a specialist at every line of coverage in the insurance industry. So for you, because this is all you see every day, how often are you doing those comparisons of coverage for retail agents and seeing just things being super misrepresented or missed? Is that common?
Extremely common. A lot of times when a company's placed with a direct market, unfortunately, and the retail broker will come to us and ask us to take a look at it and see what our markets are doing with it, and we get a copy of the policy form, there's a lot of things missed. There's a lot of coverages missed. We know sometimes what the newest enhancements are that are out there, whereas you may not know that because you're not doing it every day. Maybe you're doing let's take, for example, an employment practices policy. Maybe you're doing an employment practices policy once every month, where I'm doing it every single day, so I know that they're coming out with a higher sublimit for wage and hour coverage or enhancing third-party liability coverage. This carrier is better with this type of claims handling. Because it's not only the enhancements, it's how's the company going to handle a claim? What's the knowledge behind that? Have you ever dealt with that company? Do we have to get involved in the claims handling aspect of it at that point? So these are all things when we're doing, let's just say, $2 million with this one company, and you're dabbling in it, we're going to just know a little more because that's our specialty, or we should.
Right. And not for nothing, you not only are extremely aware of the present day landscape of the professional lines industry as it relates to common sublimits and exclusions, but your sights are also always set on what's coming down the pipeline that you can best prepare your clients for, even if it hasn't happened today, which is only available if that's, you can't possibly be present and also forward thinking in all lines of coverage. So furthering the value of working with the wholesale broker that has a specialized division dedicated to professional lines.
Yeah, and the one thing everyone has to remember, the policies that we have aren't ISO regulated. So every single policy is different. So every single carrier we deal with, their insurance policy form is different. So that's numerous different. If we're dealing with 40 something different carriers for each line of business, that's 40 different types of policy forms that are different. So it's really having an expertise, learning the policy forms, being technical in nature, but also, being able to go out to the marketplace, have the knowledge to get the deal done. Yes, we're brokers, so we're going to act like a wholesale broker. We're brokers. We want to get the best price, but our main mission is getting the best price for the best coverage and giving you the ammunition you need to sell it to the insured.
That's a lot to keep up with.
Well, it is. It's mind-boggling sometimes, and the marketplace changes drastically. Where we were talking about last year that we had this horrible hard market, now it's starting to soften a little bit. We have a lot of new players, so we have a lot of capacity out there. There's a lot of competition where there wasn't maybe a year ago in certain areas of insurance. Or, cyber, it was hard to even get a quote, and now we're getting quotes. If they have the systems in place, you're going to get quotes, but you have to know where to go. And there's all these new players and keeping on top of who's starting this MGA. And it's a full-time job. Let's just say.
Yes. Is there a professional line of coverage that comes to mind for you that's most commonly misunderstood by your retail brokers?
Well, definitely cyber. Everyone has problems with that. But I think something, I think right now everyone talks about cyber and talks about cyber. But I think the biggest challenge that I've seen over almost 25 years in the industry has been directors and officers liability. Okay. I think that's definitely a coverage that's misunderstood, that it's not purchased enough. I'm not sure if brokers are talking about it enough with their insureds or offering it to them. In short, if they're purchasing an employment practices liability policy and you're a private company or a not-for-profit company, you should be purchasing a directors and officers liability policy with that as well. And I definitely feel like brokers are not comfortable with the coverage, so sometimes they kind of sweep it under the rug or just they don't talk about it or explain it or maybe get some knowledge in that particular area.
Can you give an example of what a claims situation would look like that if they didn't have directors and officers coverage, they wouldn't be insured?
Majority of what I write is private companies, okay? So, I do some public companies, but I do a lot of small to mid-market, middle market private companies. So when I look at the ownership breakout and I see that, okay, Sam owns 50%, but then, the rest of the 50% is made up with a bunch of other people there. Some people in his family, just a bunch of 2% ownerships. We have a 5%. Let's throw it to the cousin in Minnesota and give him 1%. What they don't remember is if their company starts losing money, and we don't know why the company's losing money, or if they, decide to put a few $100,000 towards new office furniture, or maybe, the CEO just bought a new car, we don't know why and where that money came from, and the cousin in Minnesota, who only has a small percentage ownership, wants to know what's going on over there and decides to put in a claim for a mismanagement of funds or mismanagement of the company. You could have issues. That could be a directors and officers liability claim. Or if an acquisition falls through, or if the cousin in Minnesota still doesn't think, oh, you know what, we shouldn't have done that acquisition. This isn't good for me, and puts in a claim. So all these things that are going on, and, brokers, I think, need to educate them as they do with employment practices, which sometimes is a little bit easier for them to educate, or even cyber liability is a little easier now because it's in the news. Directors and officers isn't in the news as much. So I think people forget that insurance a little bit.
We are entering into a new year here. I can't believe that we're here, but time flies when you're having fun. So from where you sit, what do you anticipate seeing that might be different in the marketplace this year?
I mean, I think you're definitely going to see. I think there's going to be a little bit of rate decrease on certain lines of business. I think we have a lot of capacity and a lot of competition in the marketplace right now. I think a lot of carriers are opening up their underwriting appetites. So you have a lot of, and we also have a lot of newer players that are kind of muddying up the waters as we speak. So I think you're going to get renewal pricing flat in most cases, unless there's been horrendous claim activity or something, but usually flat or sometimes even lower than expiring.
From a new players entering the marketplace, do you think that it's a pretty saturated market with players, or even more are going to come onto the scene?
Again, it kind of depends. I mean, it's been hard to keep track over the new insurtechs that have opened up lately, or, it's constantly, we're getting emails. Hey, did you ever hear of internally we're emailing each other. Did you hear of this new one? Did you hear of that new one? So keeping track of that has been a full-time job as well. I think a lot of new players have caused the competition, which has been a good thing too, because some of the older players have been a little less restrictive, and it has loosened up those older players' underwriting guidelines.
Okay.
And they're good carriers too. So I just think it's more markets that we have, but it's going to also make the rates go down.
Well, and that just goes back to the value of working with a wholesale broker, that our retailers don't have to keep up with all those new players and everyone's individual forms and underwriting guidelines, and not for nothing, the relationships that you have to build with their underwriters and everything else. So they can leave the hard stuff to you and just come to you for a quote.
Well, I think, it's funny. It's because I remember when I first started in the industry, people would never want to tell, if we did a conference call, they would never want to say that they were using a wholesale broker, because they always wanted to portray that they could do everything. But my best brokers were always the ones that portrayed that they were using a wholesale broker, because I felt like you're doing the best for you're telling your client you're doing the best for them by kind of putting your ego aside a little bit,
yeah,
and going to someone else who has access to all of this, where you have access to this, but they have access to all of this. So why not bring a specialist on board for this type of insurance for them?
Deb, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't thank you enough for just sharing all of your insightful knowledge as it relates to the professional lines industry. There are very few people who are better at the game than you. So I appreciate you joining us. I really do.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Flip the Cap, as you all know, is the insurance industry's premier podcast, where insurance insights are always flowing and trending topics are always on tap. If you want to follow along on Jencap's latest and greatest updates, then we'll have a link at the end of the podcast to follow along on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're up to date on everything that we have going on, which is constant program launches and exciting changes and things that you can tap into as a retail agent. With that, we have to wrap it up, but I hope you'll tune in next time. Thank you so much for joining.